welcome to another edition of Pop and Scott Talk Baseball. Another fun week where we're going to highlight the White Sox, the Southsiders. We did Cubs last week, so we just thought it'd be right to do the White Sox this week. But before we jump in, we've had some things happen in the league this week. First, we're going to start with something you touched on. A couple of people have reached out offline, and also some people mentioned it on the video last week after it happened. But Ohtani, UCL, and you saying last week he looked fatigued. So people are giving you a data boy for that one because it sounds like management wanted him to get an MRI before that, and him and his guys said no. So I guess there's a little grumbling going on about that too. Came out as well. So
well, I'm curious to see how much money that's going to cost him because he can. Babe Ruth told the Yankees, "I can't do both." Now Babe Ruth had to play right field. He didn't have, he ate hot dogs, drank beer, and chased women, smoked cigars. So he wasn't in the top. But, he was a great ball player, but he could not do both. So he had to choose one or the other, and they chose hitting. So this proves one thing to me. These kids that got drafted this year in the draft, where some of the teams said, oh, they can pitch and hit and play defense, we might be able to DH them and pitch them too, just like Ohtani. For 162 games over a span of several years? No, won't happen. You got to choose one or the other, boys, and then stick to it. Because this proves it. You can't do both. I don't care what kind of shape you're in. Your body can't take that. You can't.
Right. The whole thing, because Ohtani can play outfield too. He did his first year when he started in the league.
Right, but right now he can't because he can't throw.
Right. So, but the rumor was his next contract probably would have him just as a hitter anyway, most likely. As much as he wants to do both, he's 30. He just, I think he has more to offer a team every day that's already got a good pitching staff in the lineup than he does every fifth day and being in the lineup. I guess people think just hitting is not much on your body, but just playing every day in that long of a season, like you alluded to.
They didn't DH when he pitched. He hit. Right. He hit himself. So when he hit, let's say he's in the fourth inning, second time up, he gets a line drive double to center field. He runs the bases to second base. Somebody else gets a base hit and he scores. He goes back to the dugout. The next guy makes an out. He's got to turn right around and go back on the mound and pitch. Don't tell me that doesn't tax your body. Because when I played, you had to go. You did both. You pitched and you hit. So I know what it was like to run the bases and then have to go back out there and pitch. I was done. I was tired. I had to reach back.
They have had. That's part of the reason why they wanted to get rid of pitchers hitting internationally, because they did do analysis on that, and pitchers injuries, running bases, one with hamstrings and groins, and then next was the inning after they had to run the bases. Usually they would get touched up quite a bit, or that would be their last inning or whatever.
He's still going to get a huge contract because there's going to be somebody desperate for the talent. And even though if he's not doing both, he might lose some of the bloom off the rose, so to speak. He won't be the unicorn, but the way he hits, he's still going to draw fans. That's for sure. So some team is going to offer him a huge contract, even though he's 30 years old. And he's had this year, not just the elbow. He's had 3 blisters, split nail, and earlier in the year he had to sit down for 3 games because his heel was hurting.
Right.
So, there's been other things. He's going to be 30 years old, and even though he swims every day and stays in shape, If he wanted to advertise to the Met owner yesterday, he did a good job because he hit a triple and a double, I think. I mean, he was.
Well, I think he went like 4 for 5 with 2 stolen bases.
Yeah, I mean, he was just ripping the ball all over the place.
So, I mean, he's just because I had this discussion in the card world and his value in that world and all that. But his next contract is going to be one where he's going to probably bet on himself for a 1-year deal to prove what he offers, unless somebody offers him something crazy.
Somebody's going to offer him 10 years, 7 years, 10 years, 500, 600 million. It's coming. I'm guaranteed somebody's going to be.
You think he'll still get 500 to 600 million even if he can't pitch again?
Scott, if it was me and you, no.
Right.
I would be like the Cardinals. I would have offered Pujols a 3 or 4 year deal. I wasn't going to give him 10. That's just the way I'm. I wouldn't do that. I would never have signed Strasburg. I knew more about what I should do with Strasburg than Rizzo did, and that's sad. I mean, Strasburg retired this week through 5 pitches since he got his contract. They got to pay him
31 innings. 31 innings,
and they got to pay him the rest of the contract.
Right.
Now, and they want to give Rizzo an extension for that. Oh, that's brilliant. Of course, he's done some other things to make the team look good, but that's beside the point. Somebody is going to be desperate to get somebody like Ohtani. They think that he is going to put him over the top. The Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees. The Yankees need all kinds of. You know who he should sign with? He should sign with the Dodgers, the Orioles, the Atlanta Braves, or the Philadelphia Phillies, or maybe the Seattle Mariners if he wants to win. If he wants a chance to win a World Championship, he's limited. Right. There's only so many teams that can do it, that have the talent to do it.
And they're in the window right now. Yeah.
And his age. His window's going to close in about 5 years. So in his age, those are the teams. And there might be a couple other ones, but these teams, and of course the Orioles lost their closer the other night. And that doesn't bode well for them. But
they set up man can close. So
well, he closed last night and he did okay. But
yeah,
I saw Bautista when he got hurt, and it was sad because the kid. He threw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Then he threw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball out of the strike zone. The next one was 101. And the batter swung and missed it. This is the last out now. There's 1 ball, 2 strikes on the guy. Son, he reared back and tried to throw 105 to strike the guy out and messed his arm up. He fell off the mound and messed his arm up. Why he reared back to try to all he had to do was throw 97. The guy didn't hit it.
Right. And
all he had to do was throw his forkball, and they wouldn't have hit it.
That was the discussion we had the other night is why are these pitchers throwing 100% every pitch? Why don't you why do you pitch a little bit more, hit your spots, and maybe knock a mile an hour off? And I said, well, it's not, these hitters are not the same hitters they were a decade ago, even 2 decades ago. And the more you go back, you got 9 guys now that can put it 4 rows deep every pitch. You make a mistake anywhere over that plate, and they stand a foot off the plate now. You can't go low and outside because they'll still hit that, drive it to the opposite field, little oppo. They can't hit it for a base hit through the infield, but if they get lift on it, they're going to hit it 4 rows deep.
Well, throw 97 instead of low and outside, throw it inside and watch them hit it off the handle.
Right. Inside. Well, they're ripping those hands in. They
but
got
still, to pull your hands in and hit 97 is different than reaching out and hitting 97.
Yeah, I'm with you. And they try to use the same plane. Hitting has changed to this like scientific method now. Of a flat, and getting backspin on the ball. It's not the way it used to be where these guys just, came up through the cornfields hitting things, and that's what they, hitting a rock with a broomstick.
My God.
Yeah, and that's how they learned how to hit. things have changed. I mean, these kids now at 10 years old are in batting cages with 4 video cameras on them, telling them where their swing projections are and where their hips are, where their
I
shoulders.
agree with all that, but in this situation, the kid didn't hit 97.
Right, I got you.
You don't have to throw 105.
Right,
You don't.
Yeah.
And when he was trying to throw it when he tried to throw 103, he missed the plate.
Right.
He hit the plate with 97 and 101, and the guy was late. So he throws 103 and missed the plate. Then he threw the 101 and he missed it. So instead of throwing another 101 or a 97, he tries to throw 105 and messed his arm up.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. I think there's plenty of space to be a pitcher. I still think Greg Maddux in this day and age would still be one of the greatest pitchers of all times, right? I feel like
you bring back the old pitchers, Whitey Ford, Warren Spahn, Steve Carlton. These guys, they not only threw good fastballs, they knew where they were throwing them, and they were pitchers, not throwers. They were they would figure out where your weak spot was, and they'd eat you up.
Right. Well, I mean, Kershaw's still effective to this day. Greinke is still effective. They might not be the guys they once were, but they're still effective.
Washington has 3 kids starting for them now to throw 92.
Right.
But they're keeping the ball down, and they're moving it, and they've got good breaking pitches, and then they've got 2 kids closing.
It's
Hunter and Finnegan, and they're throwing 98.
It's still about like moving the guy's eyes on every pitch. You don't want to throw 2 balls in the same spot, and about ball movement on your pitches. You can't have balls that don't move. Even at 92, I bet you their fastball either cuts in or cuts away. It's going to be something. It's going to have a little dance to it. So, yeah, I mean, again, me and you are cut from the same cloth. I mean, we are father and son. There's enough room, even though these hitters can study and catch up a lot faster than they once were. There's still enough room for the intelligent pitchers, I would say. The guys that
I'd like to see, really, before I die, I'd love to see some guy come out and work on it and be able to throw a knuckleball. Because when I grew up, there were knuckleballers, and they
Well, Tim Wakefield was the last great, great one. Him and R.A. Dickey.
I remember Mickey Mantle, an interview with Mickey Mantle, and he said, I don't care who the pitcher is, I can hit him unless he throws a knuckleball.
Right.
But I mean, the ball would barely get to the plate, but it was dancing all over the place, and it was fun to watch. But anyway, I just thought I saw the other thing about the Angels is Trout tried to come back too soon, and he's back on the IL. So, I mean,
the one thing with Ohtani's injury, they still have his bat in the lineup. And it's just a shame that they're not in contention. But, he's playing for his next contract, so that's a plus for him. And it's still, have they came out and said, did he tear the UCL? Or
they said there's an injury. He is torn. He has a slight tear in it. That's what I heard.
Okay.
But it said they may not need surgery.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
But if he can still swing the bat, it can't be so bad. So, but at the end of the year, he's probably going to have surgery. The Orioles won't come out and say that Batista's got a torn. They said it's a UCL injury. What does that mean? If it's injured, it could be a strain to a tear. So we'll just have to wait and see. But hopefully he just won't pitch the rest of the year, and he'll be able to come back next. But if he has to have Tommy John, he may not come back next year.
Well, he'll be able to hit, just like Harper.
No, I'm talking about Batista.
Oh, Batista. Yeah, he'll miss. Well, I mean, Edwin Diaz, he blew out his ankle. But, I mean, there's people now, it's an 8-month thing. So it's close if you're in contention at the end of the year or not. These guys come back. They got that. They have surgery, and they're in there rehabbing 2 days later. So,
we were talking last week. We were talking last week about the I just want to bring this up.
Yeah.
You're talking about young people playing on teams that aren't very good. And when they're playing hard and they're having a good year, that shows how good they are. Because
Right.
they're not playing for anything but a paycheck.
Right.
Bobby Witt did it again. He's the first player ever in his first 2 years to have 30 stolen bases and 80 RBIs. The first in baseball history.
Right.
And that's how good this kid is. They call him Bobby Baseball. And he plays for the Royals. So, he plays for Kansas City, so nobody sees him much. But this kid, he's got a ton of talent. When his contract up, look out. That money's going to come flying at him.
And I want to talk to his character here for a second. So a young lady, I believe from California, her parent, Bobby Witt's her favorite player. They flew to Kansas City to watch a game, and she was crying because she saw Bobby Witt come out on the field for the first time live. And Bobby Witt saw the YouTube video and sent her autograph cards and a baseball and sent her a personal video. So that speaks a little bit to his character.
Yeah,
I know a lot of players
about the young man.
Yeah, I know players do that when they see it, but this past weekend with Williamsport and what the players did up there, I think they've been interactive, but that looked like that was the most interactive I've ever seen two teams. Now, granted, Washington's young, so they're not much older than the kids at Williamsport, and the Phillies, they're a fun team. But most of them have little kids of their own.
And here again, Bryce Harper and a few of the other guys on the Phillies. Yeah, a lot of these guys on the Phillies team work with the children and the youth in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
So they interact with the kids all the time and the young people. And the same thing with the Nationals. The Nationals have the what they call it. I guess all the teams have the little bleacher bums with the little kids.
Well, the Nationals actually run a little league, not a program, but like inner city practices and stuff.
Inner city practices where they're trying to get the inner city kids to learn how to play baseball.
Right. And I forget who's running it. I saw a thing on that this past year, and they brought out a couple of the higher known minor leaguers because they got some of their minor leagues are in the Washington area, so not too far away. So I know they're involved with Washington.
And Davey Martinez got a two-year extension. So,
yeah, and I don't know.
Since the All-Star break, there's something like 29-15 or 26.
Well, I told you. What did I say? I've been saying it all along. They're not going to have a winning record, but they're not going to be the team you want to play against at the end of the year
because they got better all year.
And also that talent. Up the middle, they're one of the best teams in baseball. Up the middle on defense.
Yes.
So you do that. That's going to win you some games right there. And then on top of that, they're just young. They're scrappy. Some of these guys know they're in a rebuild phase, so they're not going to be part of this rebuild. They're playing for their next team. So when you do that and you're hungry, you got to watch out for the guys that are hungry. It's like that every year. Milwaukee started out that way. Before Milwaukee's had, these playoffs runs that they've been having, they were the team you didn't want to play at the end of the year.
Right.
Or now you don't want to play them in the playoffs because they're just scrappy. They're just hungry. So, they just got to get over that hump. And also they have, I think, one of the best managers that I've seen.
I think everybody agrees Greg Counsell is one of the best managers in baseball. No question.
So
to make that team's won 9 games in a row. They didn't do it with smoke and mirrors.
Right. So we're going to do what we usually do, and I count because I was looking at this last night. Regular season, Baltimore still hanging on to that three game lead. They've been playing some tough games here lately. Minnesota's just stretching it out even more. This is what I wanted to talk about. Seattle, they leapfrogged 2 teams. They not only they said we don't want the playoff berth, we want to win the division. Yeah, I said last week Texas is in trouble. Their momentum is gone.
Well, Texas is having a problem with their pitching. their pitching is still decent, but they're still having some problems with it. Houston is up and down, and Seattle is just the only thing about Seattle that bothers me is that they traded their closer for whatever reason at the trade deadline. I
didn't think they thought they're going to be in this place right
now.
now.
It didn't make any sense to me, but I mean, they're making it work. I mean, they're playing very well right now, and I think they play the A's next weekend, so we'll see what happens. But go back up to the Yankees real quick. The Yankees, I talked to two of my New York friends in church this morning, Yankee friends, and they're all upset. And I told them, look, man, we're all old people. You had it when you were young. They won all the time. They were only in the 1950s, 1954 and 59 were the only 2 years they weren't in the World Series. But anyway, one of the other things, I found this out. Domingo Germán has been suspended because he had an altercation in the clubhouse a few weeks ago, and he was under the influence. So thankfully, the young man is getting some help. They've got him some help, and he's going to rehab. So, but that's another problem the Yankees
Dad,
have.
with the talent they still have on that team, we all know there's more going on than what's going on the field. There has to be, because they have too much talent. I don't care. They're not a 481 team.
It just doesn't seem.
When you look at now they've just given up they're not even playing the games. I mean, some of the errors I've seen are just giving up on balls.
Well, the Nationals beat them 2 out of 3.
Right. And I mean, they have given up. And you know what? If I was Cashman and the owner, I'd be like, well, you're not wearing the pinstripes mean more to me than that, right? Even to me as a guy that hates the Yankees and is kind of I don't want to see that happen to an iconic team. I'd rather see the team of the Mattingly bad years play. At least they played than what I'm seeing right now.
Right. Yeah. Thurman Munson, they played hard.
Right. So I just, the pinstripes, when you put those on day in and day out, should mean something. They're I said this before. I growing up and playing in the backyard, you're always playing in the World Series. You were either playing for the Yankees or playing against them. You're at the bottom, bobbing the ninth with the winning run on third with 2 outs and 2 strikes, and down by 1. You were always, that was the case, and it's still that way to this day.
Okay, we can go back to the West now, but I just wanted to, I thought I'd throw that in there because
the Yankees are sad. This is the sad thing, and it couldn't happen to a better team. But anyway, I digress. And also, somebody brought to my, because attendance was up this year. Now it's a little down. But when the 2 teams in New York are both in last place, attendance is going to be down overall, because that's the difference. And Oakland hasn't had anybody come to their games all year. But Atlanta, not a big deal. It was more the American League that I wanted to show. Not Arizona's past San Francisco, but the wild card. Let's look at that.
Yeah, the wild card is where the race. The race is going to be in the American League West to see who wins the West, and then the wild card is going to be crazy.
So Toronto is still just a game and a half, but they're not doing themselves any favors. They're losing some games they probably should be winning. The Phillies, they clinched.
The Phillies are rolling. The Phillies look really good.
That's going to be the team in the playoffs.
They're reminding me a lot of last year when at the end of the year they started playing well and then they won the playoffs.
Right. And I mean, that's,
the Arizona has righted the ship.
Yeah. Well, they're playing better. I just think everybody else has played back to them a little bit. But yeah.
And the Cubs, they've got an easy schedule, so who knows?
Right. And they're in Cincinnati, still a half a game out. The other day yesterday when I looked at it, there was 4 teams because Chicago, Arizona, and Cincinnati, I think, were virtually tied.
They were just about tied, yeah.
Yeah. So
In Miami, you were talking about attendance. The Nationals had beaten them all year, and they went down there and they won the last two games down in Miami. And last night's game, I was watching that game, and yesterday afternoon's game rather, and watching that game, and they had 16,000 people in the ballpark. 16,000
at Miami,
in Miami. The
That's
team
right.
trying to get in the playoffs, and they got 16,000 people. That's pathetic.
for Miami, that's a huge crowd.
That's
I mean,
it.
that's how sad it is. Miami and Tampa do not deserve baseball teams. They want to add teams, take them away from there. That they need to be gone. It is a preseason destination. Florida is let them have their theme
Spring
park.
training.
Right. I mean, the Dolphins don't even sell out anymore. I mean, Miami Hurricanes, the Orange Bowl, they done blocked off the top of that. The Florida is not for pro sports. The Panthers, I mean, you got teams in the Stanley Cup every year, and you can't sell out your hockey teams. I mean, they get pretty good attendance compared to everybody else, but still, it's not the same. It's not like it is here in Raleigh or Washington, where the
Well, you can't get
crowd
a ticket.
is rabid. Yeah, it's just crazy. But I just wanted to show that off a little bit. I knew the National League that while we're not going to have 5-6 teams fighting for the last spot, it looks like we're just going to have 2 or 3 teams fighting for
Exactly.
the last couple of spots.
Exactly.
So, and that's just as fun. That's what they wanted, and it's still. My fear was that we're going to have where we wouldn't have that, and you still added all these teams, and it's just going to be not fun. Just get to. I am ready for the playoffs though, because my team stinks. So, but anything else caught you? The Orioles, they're at first place in they got the best record in the American League. With their closer going down, I still think they have enough talent, especially in Atlanta. Younger players are playing like veterans now in this part of the year. Do you see any letdown in that team with their – because you watch them almost day in and day out. Do you see any letdown with this?
I sit there at night sometimes and flip back and forth between the Nationals and Washington, except when one of them's on a West Coast road trip.
Right.
And I might watch 2 innings and go to bed. I'm an old man.
So they're a next man up type of team.
See, the other thing is, and this is, I'm going to tell anybody that's an Oriole fan watching, this comes from an old guy that's watched sports his whole life. And this is any sport. They are playing this year. They are pulling out games in the 6th, 7th, and 8th innings, and 9th innings. They're pulling games out. That means this year they may do great. Next year they might not be able to do that. So don't expect them to do this back to back, because a lot of times you can't do that back to back. Now, if they have their closer come back next year and they can keep all their people, they can still play great ball. But don't expect to come back every 6th, 7th, and 8th inning. With the last 3 or 4 nights, they've come from behind. They've come from behind more than any other team in baseball. So, that's just don't expect it. But they have so much resiliency. They and the Nationals both, they just keep playing. They just keep playing. The Nationals were losing last night, and they came back in the last inning and won. They scored, and then they held the Marlins in the 9th inning and won. And so, I think the Orioles. But if they don't have their closer, I think, son, when they go into the playoffs, they may be the underdogs in the playoffs just because they don't have their closer. Depending on who they play. Depending on who they play, that's, But
they have used other closer. That closer was hurt during the year. They had their closer and setup man hurt at the same time, and they still won games. So, I just feel like that team is kind of. I've said it all year. They don't know any better, but sometimes reality hits at a certain point, and now your closer's down again at this point of the season. In
Well,
reality,
they traded for Flanagan from the Cardinals, and he's pitching like he did for the Cardinals, so he hadn't helped him much.
right? Yeah, he's just a body, a warm body right now. So, but I was curious. Anything I'm trying to, nothing else has really jumped out at me. I just think we're playing it out. I wanted to point out how bad I feel. Not how bad I feel for you, how bad for baseball that the Yankees are the way they are right now. Because I can't root against I could root against the last place team, but it doesn't mean anything. Any thoughts or anything before we jump into the team we're going to cover for this week?
Well, I mean, I was prepared to come on here and brag about picking the Seattle Mariners to do well this year, but I can't because I picked the Cardinals. So
right.
It cancels the stupidity of the Cardinals, cancels out the genius of the.
Well, you won't do. I think a lot of people.
Yeah, they haven't won it yet. They still might not make the playoffs,
but a lot of people pick the Cardinals to win that division.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm not.
You're not the only one.
I watch him on. Billy Ripken was on the other night. He said, "I picked the Cardinals. What a moron!"
Well, that's another team.
Yeah, Brian Kenny
picked out.
He picked them too.
It's hard to figure what's going on at that.
Well, here again, here's one of the little things, and then we'll get into White Sox. We're running a little long.
Right.
Here's the thing. They did away with the shift. The Cardinals don't have strikeout pitchers. They have ground ball pitchers. So when you do away with the shift and your other team is hitting ground balls and you've done away with the shift, a lot of the balls that got hit to the short right fielder and thrown out at first are base hits. So there's something to that.
Right.
I'm just saying there's something to that. And when you have people on base more, there's more problems. So right. I mean, I'm just throwing that in. And then plus, a lot of the Cardinals are just having terrible years. I mean, they're just having bad years.
Well, they're number 1 and 2 guys. They're not getting younger. So
no,
Goldschmidt, Arenado.
Yeah, Arenado and Goldschmidt. They're not getting any younger. Their pitching staff certainly not getting any younger. So.
And I do want to add, they did play meaningful games in the WBC before the season started. So that takes a little out of your tank as well. I just want to point that out.
Well, look how long it took Trey Turner after that to come back and start being a good ball player with the Phillies. He was being booed and vilified on social media in Philadelphia. Now he's doing like he always did, and he's doing fine.
I just think he was trying too hard, to tell you the truth. But Philly's not an easy place to play at.
So, yeah, it's like New York.
So let's get into this week's team, the White Sox. Dad, take it away.
Of course, the Chicago White Sox. Guess where they play? Chicago. All right. They're a member of the AL Central Division. The team is owned by Jerry Reinsdorf and plays its home games at Guaranteed Rate Field, and it's located on Chicago's south side. Remember, we talked about the North Siders, the Cubs, last week, and they've been called that ever since back in the 19-teens. One of the American League's 8 charter franchises, the White Sox were established as a Major League Baseball club in 1900 as the Chicago White Stockings, before shortening their name to the White Sox in 1904. The team originally played their home games at Southside Park before moving to Comiskey Park in 1910. There it is right there, where they played until 1990. They moved into their current home, which was originally also known as Comiskey Park, like its predecessor, and later carried sponsorship from U.S. Cellular for the 1991 season. The White Sox won their first World Series against the Cubs in 1906 with a defense-oriented team dubbed the Hitless Wonders. And that was the year that the Cubs set the record for the Major League record for wins in a regular season. And they won the 1917 World Series against the New York Giants. Their next appearance was in the 1919 World Series, which was marred by the Black Sox scandal, in which 8 members of the White Sox were found to have conspired with gamblers to fix games and lose the World Series to the Cincinnati Reds. In response, even though the players were found innocent in a court of law, the new MLB commissioner, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, banned the players from ever playing. They were banned for life. The White Sox have only made 2 World Series appearances since the scandal. The first came in 1959, where they lost to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and then before they finally won their 3rd World Series championship in 2005, when they swept the Houston Astros. The 87 years it took the White Sox to win the World Series stands as the 2nd longest MLB championship drought of all time, after the Cubs' 107 seasons. From 1900 to 2022, the White Sox have an overall won-loss record of 9,492 wins and 9,390 losses, so they have a 503 winning percentage. Now, they started out, and you lived in Iowa for a few years, so you'll know, they started out in the minor leagues in the Western League as the Sioux City Cornhuskers. In 1894, Charlie Comiskey bought the team and moved them to St. Paul, where they became the Saints in St. Paul, Minnesota. 1900, he moved them to Chicago, where they became the White Stockings, which was the Cubs' former name. 1917, well, I mentioned that they won the World Series against the Giants, and they were led by Eddie Cicotte and Shoeless Joe Jackson. Then they had the Black Sox scandal where they lost to the Reds, as I said before, and they went downhill after that. In 1920, was when the players were acquitted, but Landis banished the players for life. They didn't do much after that, and then from 36 to 46, they were managed by Jimmy Dykes, and they had shortstop Luke Appling and pitcher Todd Lyons. And then in 1958, Bill Veeck bought the team, and from 51 to 57, they were known as the Go-Go White Sox, and they were a very good team for about 17 years. They were winning records, and they're known as the Go-Go White Sox, so they didn't use power, they used speed. And they had Minnie Minoso, who played the outfield, Luis Aparicio at shortstop, Nellie Fox at second base, Billy Pierce was one of their pitchers, and Sherm Lawler was their catcher. In the 1959 World Series, I walked home from I walked home from school. No, came home from school on the school bus because that was my 8th grade, Thomas Dale. I started in high school in 59 in the fall, and I came home and the game was just ending, and they had lost they beat the Dodgers 11-0 in the first game in the 59 World Series, and the Dodgers wound up winning in 6 games. In 1972, they had the American League MVP, Dick Allen. Now, you don't remember him because you were a year old.
I know who he is.
You know who he is, but in 1993, Jerry Reinsdorf bought the team, and Frank Thomas, they had Ventura, Ozzie Guillen, and in 1990 to 2005, they had Jack McDowell, Bobby Thigpen, Paul Konerko, Mark Burley, A.J. Prunzinski, and Carlton Fisk played for him for a while. Now, as I mentioned before, they won that World Series in 2005, and now they had Jose Abreu, who they kept, and then they either traded him or he signed as a free agent with Houston, and Tim Anderson, who was their shortstop. That's their major claim to fame in this year for about the 3rd or 4th year in a row. For those of us who follow the game rather pointedly, they've actually underachieved. That team has had for the last 10 years or so, they've had a pretty good ball club, And for some reason, they just haven't been able to. And now, and then when I was looking this up, I couldn't put, like I say this every week, for those, he missed this, he missed that. I can't report everything in the history of this team because we'd be here for 4 hours. They've tried to move this team to Seattle, to Milwaukee, to all kinds of different places. Now they're threatening to move again if they don't get a new team. They're threatening to move to Seattle. If they don't, I mean, not Seattle, but where are they going to? I can't remember where they said now. They're threatening to move the team Portland, I think, if they don't get.
Portland really wants, they're trying to get a team.
If they don't get a new stadium. So that's in the works again. So who knows what's going to happen there. But that's the White Sox. And they did have a couple of World Series.
I'm sitting here.
I remember the 59 World Series because my mom, I told you she grew up outside of Chicago. She was a White Sox fan. Right. She was rooted for both, but she was a White Sox fan before she was a Cubs fan because she said her dad was a house painter. And so she said the White Sox were the blue-collar team. The Cubs were the team of the snobs in the Chicago area. She said they were the snobby team when she was growing up. She was born in 1919.
Telling me that too.
Yeah, she told you that they were the snobs, and so she was a White Sox fan. And then when she was a teenager, they moved to Detroit, and she got to see the Tigers play a few times. And she was a Red Wings fan too.
You look at their Hall of Famers, which this is kind of the opposite. A lot of their Hall of Famers had pretty good careers with the White Sox.
Yeah, and I knew you would cover.
Luke Appling, Harold Baines, Eddie Collins. Steve Carlton played most of his career with the Phillies, but
he started out. Didn't he start out with the White Sox, or did he end up with them? I can't remember. I try to remember everything, but I can't. But I know as a kid during the 1950s, they had a pretty good ball club. But as I said before, the 1954 Indians.
They started with the Cardinals. I couldn't remember how that trade went.
In 1954, the Cleveland Indians won the won the American League. Well, see, I remember when I was a little kid, I'd listen to games on radio, and I started collecting ball cards before I started school in the bubblegum packs and on the backs of cereal boxes and all that. Right. Well, my first recollection of knowing what of remembering, because you don't remember when you're a little kid. 1954 World Series, Mom let me stay home the first day, for the first game from school, and told me this is the only time you'll ever be able to do this again. So I was able to sit there and watch that whole game. And Cleveland had the best record in baseball by a long shot, the best pitching staff in baseball, but the Giants swept them in 4 games. And that first game is where Willie Mays made the catch in center field off of Vic Wertz and doubled Larry Doby off second base. And it took the wind right out of the sails of the Indians, and they never came back, and they lost in 4 games. The Yankees won every World Series, every American League title after that. They lost in 55 to the Dodgers. They lost to the Milwaukee Braves in the 57 World Series. And then the White Sox beat them out in 59. And then the Yankees won again in 60 and 61, and 61 is when they lost to the Pirates. But the Yankees won every other year except 59 and 54. So that's what I'm saying. When I was a kid, it was easy for me to dislike the Yankees because they won every year in the American League, and I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan until they moved, and I was still a Dodger fan until Duke Snyder retired, and then I still rooted for him until Sandy Koufax retired. But
getting back to the White Sox, they had my favorite player, one of my favorite players, Frank Thomas.
Oh, he was great.
But a notable that didn't make it. If he would have been able to, probably would have stuck with one sport and not got hurt, was Bo Jackson.
Yes.
He was an incredible player. That team that they had that went to the World Series with that team, Tim Raines, all those guys on that team that year was incredible. I remember watching those. I mean, they had Minnie Minosa. I just love looking at the names of the players that played there. But thanks, Dad, for that. The White Sox, you hit on the nail on the head. That for whatever reason, the last 5 to 8 years, they should be better on paper than what they are doing. They just can't get it together. Even though this year, Lewis Robert is playing what he's doing what he was projected to do with them. He's doing it with the White Sox because a lot of people probably haven't heard about it or seen it. But
well, here again, I don't know much about him because I never see him. Because the games I get to see are the Nationals and the Orioles, and then whatever MLB shows, whatever ESPN shows tonight, and then FS1 and Fox show games every now and then. I've got to find them to watch them. So,
well, like the Mets
I've been
game
watching
today
the
with
Orioles
the
and the
Peacock.
Nationals. I've been watching the Orioles and the Nationals, and that's pretty exciting.
Right. The Mets game was on Peacock. I had to run errands today, so I missed it. But
no, I can't. I don't get Peacock.
Right. Yeah, I have that channel just so I can see wrestling events. But yeah, that's the White Sox hopefully will turn it around. I didn't know about them threatening to move, but I know Portland's been pushing for a team here.
I'm not sure it's Portland, but they're threatening to move if they don't get another ball.
Right. Portland's a place that's wants a team. Memphis, Nashville, Montreal. They're the places that you hear a lot. I know some talk about Raleigh, Charlotte area as well.
I've also heard possibilities Oklahoma City
Could be.
for a major league team.
Yeah,
But
could be.
who knows? You got to have a ballpark. You got to build a ballpark, and those things cost a fortune.
Right.
You can't build a ballpark like you used to.
And unfortunately, a lot of time taxpayer money is used for that. So
And it should be used for schools and feeding the poor.
right.
Sorry, guys, that's more important than baseball.
Right. But anyway, thanks for watching and listening and tuning in. Let us know what you're thinking about the playoffs. Who do you want to sneak in? Who's your click for this next 6 weeks of the season? Who's going to stand up and clinch that? I think the MVP, even with Ohtani being hurt, just the way he's hitting and continue to hit, I think he's still going to be the guy with it. But let me know what everybody's thinking.
Acuna might not win in the National League. It might be Mookie Betts.
It might be, but Acuna, I mean, he might get 40-40.
Yeah.
But anyway, till next time, like, share, tell a friend. Let us know in the comments what you're thinking on the season. Until next time, we'll see ya.